When you share a life with someone, you think love will always be enough. You believe that the person you wake up beside will remember the little things, the quiet sacrifices, the nights you stayed awake just to make sure they were okay. I used to believe that too. Until the day my husband looked at me with eyes that didn't see me anymore. That was the day I realized love can fade quietly. Not with shouting or broken plates, but with silence. The kind of silence that hurts more than any argument ever could. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how the man I loved forgot who stood beside him, and how somehow I learnt to forgive him anyway. When I first met Amir, he was the kind of man who made the world feel lighter. He wasn't rich, but he was kind. He had this smile, the kind that made you forget how tired you were. We met at a small family gathering. He was standing by the window pouring tea for my father. He said Assalamu alaikum with such sincerity that I remember thinking, this man speaks like his words have weight. After our marriage, life was simple. We didn't have much, but we had peace. I learned how to stretch a single meal into two, how to laugh when the electricity went out, how to make our home feel warm even when winter refused to end. Amir used to thank me for everything. He'd say, Sarah, I don't know how you do all this. You make my world easy, and I'd smile and tell him that's what love does. Those words, they were my strength for years. But slowly, life began to shift. As Amir's work grew, so did his distance. Meetings, phone calls, late nights. And though I tried to understand, I started feeling like I was fading into the background of his busy world. I'd wait for him at dinner. The food would go cold. The clock would keep ticking. And when he finally came home, he'd just sigh and say, I'm too tired. Sarah, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow, that word became a habit between us. Tomorrow we'll talk. Tomorrow we'll laugh. Tomorrow will be us again. But tomorrow never really came. I remember one evening so clearly, it still lives in my heart like a bruise. It was our 10th anniversary. I had cooked his favorite dish, had worn the blue dress he once said made me look like the ocean. The table was ready. Candles were lit. I had even written a small letter, just a few lines reminding him how much I still loved him. He didn't come home until midnight. And when he did, he didn't notice the food, the candles, or the letter. He just said, Sarah, why are you still awake? You should have eaten. Something inside me cracked quietly. I said softly, it's our anniversary, Amir. He looked surprised, almost guilty. Oh, I forgot, he said. Just those 3 words I forgot. I smiled, because what else could I do? He walked to his room and I sat there, staring at the cold food on the table. The candles had burned down to wax puddles. I blew out the last one and whispered to myself, he forgot. But I'll remember. From that night, everything changed in small ways. He stopped noticing when I was quiet. He didn't see how hard I worked to keep our home alive. And maybe, just maybe, I stopped trying to remind him. Because sometimes silence becomes easier than explaining your pain. Days turned into months. He got promotions, traveled often, met new people. Whenever he spoke about work, his eyes lit up. When he looked at me, they didn't. One day, while cleaning his study, I found a framed photograph of him and his colleagues. In the center, there was a young woman smiling, standing just a little too close. I felt a sting in my chest, but I said nothing, because I didn't want to be the wife who doubts. That night, while I ironed his shirts, he said, Sarah, you should go visit your parents for a while. You need a break. A break. Not, I'll come with you. Not, we both need rest. Just, you need a break. I nodded. I went. But my heart stayed behind. When I returned 2 weeks later, our house felt unfamiliar. The air was colder. There were 2 coffee cups in the sink. I told myself maybe someone from work had stopped by. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep inside, I knew something was gone. That evening, I asked him gently, Amir, are you happy? He didn't answer at first. Then he said, Sarah, we've both changed. Maybe we just need space. I remember my hands shaking. I whispered, I never asked for space. I only wanted time with you. He sighed and left the room. And that's when I realized I wasn't losing him suddenly. I had been losing him piece by piece for years. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen. Rain was falling outside. I watched the drops slide down the window like slow tears, and I thought of every moment I'd stayed awake for him, every prayer I'd whispered for his success, every time I'd hidden my own pain just so he could smile. He had forgotten all of it. He had forgotten me. The next morning, I packed my clothes quietly. No drama, no anger, just a heavy calm. He watched me and said softly, "Sarah, where are you going?" I said, "To find myself again." "Because you already forgot me." He didn't stop me, and I didn't look back. For months, I lived with my parents. They tried to comfort me. But heartbreak doesn't heal with words, it heals with silence. I spent mornings sitting by the window, learning how to breathe without memories choking me. I realized something then. I had spent so many years being someone's strength that I had forgotten to be my own. And yet, I didn't hate him, because love doesn't disappear with distance. It just changes its shape. Mine had turned into prayer. Every night I prayed, Ya Allah, remind him of who we were, not for me, but for the man he used to be. One evening, about 6 months later, I received a letter. It was from Amir. He wrote, "Sarah, I saw your blue dress in the wardrobe today. I don't know why I kept it, but when I saw it, I remembered everything. The dinners, the laughter, your patience. You were always beside me, even when I stopped looking. I forgot who you were, but I never truly stopped needing you. If forgiveness has a voice, I hope it sounds like yours." I cried reading those words, not because of pain, but because I felt peace. Sometimes people only realize the value of love when life becomes quiet enough for them to hear their own heart. A week later, he came to see me. He looked older, softer, humbled. We sat across from each other, and for a long time, no one spoke. Then he said, "Sarah, I don't deserve your forgiveness." I replied, "Maybe not. But I'll give it anyway because I don't want to live with bitterness." And for the first time in years, I saw the man I had married, not the one lost in work, not the one blinded by pride, but the one who used to pour tea for my father with humble hands. We talked for hours that night, not about the past, but about what we had learnt. He promised to start again, slowly, with honesty. And I decided to try, not because I was weak, but because forgiveness felt stronger than pain. Today, when I look back, I realize love isn't about perfection. It's about remembrance. It's about seeing the person who stood beside you when no one else did. There are still days when silence fills our home, but it's no longer heavy. Now it's a silence of understanding, a pause between two hearts that have learnt to listen again. Sometimes Amir still forgets small things, like the sugar in his tea, or where he left his keys, and we both laugh, because we know that the real forgetting, the one that once tore us apart, will never happen again. I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because I needed peace. And in forgiving him, I found myself again. So if you're listening to this story tonight, and you feel unseen, unheard, or forgotten, remember this: the love you give never disappears. It stays quietly, waiting to be remembered.